Watch this.
With just about 45 minutes to spare, Governor Little has signed Idaho's controversial property tax relief bill. He didn't like doing it, but he did it, which makes about as much sense as property taxes.
I could probably go back to maybe 50 years, and this is the highest increase I've ever seen. This has just been amazing.
No, he's not talking property taxes, but property values. The Ada County assessor is shocked by what so many saw coming. Just maybe not this much. And yeah, it will help determine how much you do pay in property taxes. Idaho's teens and tweens are now able to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Many parents have been ready for it for a while. Others, not so much. We ask a pediatrician to address some of those concerns. Well, here we are, legislative day 122 of this 2021 session. They've been deliberating the entire time. Most of it kind of behind the scenes on this property tax bill. It's kind of made it through the entire state house finally, just before the deadline this morning. Idaho Governor Brad Little signing off on that property tax legislation. Supporters saying it will help Idaho homeowners struggling with rising property taxes in fast-growing areas of the state, but that more work needs to be done in future sessions. Critics say it barely moves the needle and that Idahoans deserve a better solution, especially considering the fact that lawmakers have had a record amount of time in session to solve issues like this. Joe Paris spoke with lawmakers about the newly signed bill to get the pros and the cons and the what's next.
Oh, it's a good thing. It's a good start. We've got a long ways to go, but it's a good start.
Republican Representative Mike Moyle's property tax legislation was signed into law earlier by Governor Brad Little. Moyle says some of the highlights of the bill include raising the homeowners exemption from $100,000 to $125,000, as well as increasing the circuit breaker program to up to $1,500 a year to help qualifying Idahoans get extra property tax relief. Now, that circuit breaker is actually a property tax credit for homeowners that have property taxes consume a disproportionate amount of their income. People like low-income seniors. Moyle says that fast growth is also something this bill takes on.
There is a lot of good stuff in there. The component with new construction is huge for these fast-growing areas. It'll have a big impact in the future. Your grandmother living down the road shouldn't have her taxes increased because somebody from another state built a house next to her. This fixes that problem.
That is accomplished, Moyle says, with caps on how much local governments can collect and increase their budgets with new construction. Local budgets are also capped at 8% growth. Critics say that puts local governments trying to keep up with growth in a tough spot.
Every rapidly growing local taxing district is going to have concerns with this bill because it mandates service cuts beyond what residents might want or might need for, just good safety standards.
Democrat Representative Lauren Necochea says the legislation hardly accomplishes anything. Critics of the bill like her say, yes, the homeowners exemption increase is nice, but it doesn't fix the problems for Idahoans in need.
In Ada County, in the last 12 months, home prices went up by 27%. They went up by 42% in Canyon County. So this small increase in the homeowners exemption doesn't even cushion homeowners for 1 year of home price growth.
In his transmittal letter, Governor Little says he signed the property tax bill to support the bill's sponsor's intent to provide overdue and much-needed property tax relief for Idahoans. However, Little added that, quote, "I fear the long-term consequences may outweigh this temporary reprieve. I believe we can do more to address this growing problem." Little also keyed in on concerns about new eligibility for the circuit breaker set to begin next year. To qualify, a property must be assessed at 125% or less of the median home value in the county.
What Governor Little called unintended consequences for seniors are actually very much intended consequences, and that is that certain low-income seniors who today qualify for property tax assistance will be removed from the program depending on what the value of their house is. And you could have a very modest house, but be in a rapidly growing neighborhood where prices are going up. And then you could therefore be kicked off of the program.
The reason that's in there is we have some homes that are like multi-million-dollar homes that are getting the circuit breaker. And there are some who have a concern that we are subsidizing those living in big fancy houses, for example, along the Snake River with boat docks, or a multi-million-dollar home in, say, Ada County.
Moyle says the property tax bill was not a rushed effort and is the result of working with a variety of special interest groups and lawmakers. He fully acknowledges that there is a lot left to accomplish for Idahoans on property tax. Meanwhile, critics say more could have been done now by lawmakers.
I understand why the governor had deep concerns with this legislation. It's very problematic, and I wish he would have vetoed it instead of signing, a problematic law.
So when you bring that many people in and you're trying to find solutions, this is as far as we could get where we had the pushback. Everybody had a consensus or an agreement in here. There was stuff to love and stuff to hate by different groups, but it moved the ball in the right direction. And that's why I said this is just a starting point.
Okay, Joe, so if this, after 122 days, is just the starting point, where do we go from here?
Well, Brian, it's kind of a wait till next year for action, but start talking now about what that could look like. Representative Moyle says that there will be an interim group that'll start meeting this summer to discuss property tax and property tax solutions. They know that they've got a lot on their plate to solve for the upcoming session. A year from now is when they're hoping to have more of this fully worked out. But Representative Moyle says there's already new ideas being worked on to be introduced coming up in January 2022.
Joe, are they still in session, like right now, still on day 122?
Oh yeah, they're still working hard right now, going through a number of housekeeping items as well as some outlying bills. But Brian, over on the Senate side, it was said on the floor, they're going to work there until it's done. So it could be a very late night tonight.
Which means more pizza probably at the State House, I guess. All right. Thank you very much, Joe. Your property taxes are determined by the assessed market value of your home. Those determinations are done by county assessors. I mean, it's in their job title, county assessors. They assess property. They're done every year. And this year, is this really going to shock anybody? Let's put it this way. If the Ada County assessor says he's shocked by the newest numbers, well, those assessments, they're being mailed out this month. So you might want to open that envelope carefully. Maybe in the driveway without anything breakable nearby. Shocking is the word used by Ada County Assessor Bob McQuaid, who's been in the same position since 1994. That's more than a quarter century on the job, and he says he's never seen a jump like this, ever. But before we get to those numbers, how does the county determine the assessed value of your property? Well, McQuaid says the assessor's office looks at sale prices of comparable homes in your area. Your value will also depend on upgrades, location, and lot sizes, and a few other things. It's based on what a typical buyer would pay as of January 1st of that year. McQuaid says last year there were 13,000 single-family homes sold in Ada County. So how does that compare to 2020's assessments?
Our appraisal staff, they can't believe the large increases. Typically we see an increase of about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, but this year we're looking at a 25% increase in values. So I know this is a big increase, but it's certainly well supported by the sales data that we have.
And that's just in Ada County. It's a little bit higher in Canyon County. So to put that in perspective, during the last really hot housing market in Boise, I should say, back in 2006, 2007, Ada County saw a 13 to 14% increase in those assessed values. So when you get that letter next month, does that mean that's exactly what you're going to be paying in property taxes? No, it doesn't. There are exemptions to consider, like the homeowners exemption that was just raised from $100,000 to $125,000. You get to subtract that before taxes are assessed. And there's other things to consider as well. However, the number written on that assessment isn't either written in stone. You can appeal that value with just a quick phone call to the assessor's office. And the deadline to do that, to file that appeal, is coming up on Monday, June 28th. So stay tuned. As we mentioned, day 122 of the 2021 legislative session, a lot of 20s there. It's now the longest in state history and looks like it's going to continue. It was a late restart for lawmakers today, as Joe mentioned, made their way back from a week-long recess this afternoon. Senate convening at 1 o'clock, reconvening that is. The House closer to 4 o'clock. Still getting that per diem though, I'm guessing? I don't know. Both houses making clear that they want to get out of town as soon as possible. So what's still left for them to get through before they can officially call it a year? Sine die, adjourn. Well, budgets for one. Also, the spending of federal money, some of which has yet to be distributed. Some lawmakers are still upset Governor Little was able to spend COVID federal relief money last year without their consent because they weren't in session to approve it. So they're hoping to avoid a similar scenario this year, which is why Representative Megan Blanksma introduced House Concurrent Resolution 23, and it would allow lawmakers to recess for a third time this session. So technically, they wouldn't be adjourning officially for the year, rather taking an extended break and coming back to finish up business before September 1st, all without extra expense to taxpayers, right? No per diem during this extended break. That resolution would not pay that per diem until they come back to the State House. Lawmakers will be called back by House Pro Tem and Speaker. That bill, or that resolution, I should say, passed 55-8 today and now heads to the Senate. So it looks like the longest session in state history. Yeah, they're going to keep adding them up. Not the recess days, or maybe they do. We'll have to figure that out, at least for another several days. Like actual COVID numbers, vaccine eligibility keeps dropping. And for Idaho's kids, that may mean one step closer to getting back to normal. Some of their parents are actually worried it may be too soon or too dangerous, but not according to an actual pediatrician. You know what we like? Actual perspectives from actual viewers. So jump in on this conversation by way of text message, 208-321-5614. And if you don't wait too long, we might even share it at the end of the show. But make sure you include your name and the hashtag #the208. The next critical step in getting closer to herd immunity when it comes to COVID-19 is opening up vaccine eligibility to younger age groups. And with yesterday's Food and Drug Administration approval and with today's Centers for Disease Control consent, that means more than 105,000 more Idahoans can get a coronavirus vaccine. Shots could be available as early as tomorrow for those ages 12 to 15. This only applies to the Pfizer version of the vaccine, though. The approval is based on what scientists and medical experts are calling a very impressive clinical trial. More than 2,200 kids took part in the Pfizer study. Half of them got the vaccine. The other half got a placebo shot, a shot of salt water. Of those 2,260 participants, only 18 cases of symptomatic COVID infections popped up, all of them in the placebo group. None showed up in the group that got the actual vaccine. Those vaccinated also produced higher levels of antibodies than those in older age groups, making them even more immune. Like, if you could rate the vaccine performance in adults, like give it a 9 out of 10 so far, what we've seen. This study, it went to 11. However, according to a recent Kaiser Family Foundation poll of parents, only 30% were gung-ho about getting their kids a COVID shot right away. Their concerns, some of the same heard by St. Alphonsus Medical Group's Director of Pediatrics, Dr. Nadia Antique. So we sat down with her to hear what she says to those parents.
I think that the youth of today have suffered tremendously with the COVID pandemic. Things being shut down, wearing masks at school, not being able to attend school comfortably, and that many of the patients I talk to in the 12 to 15 range are very excited about the vaccine because they want to return to hang out with their friends safely, without a mask, indoors, doing all the activities that they used to enjoy doing before this pandemic.
I'm sure it's not like 100% of your patients and their parents are like, let's do this. I'm sure you've heard some of the questions about concerns, right?
Yeah, of course, parents, even the ones who are excited about the vaccine, want to make sure that it's, number one, safe for their children, and two, that it's efficacious or that will actually help to prevent against the disease of COVID.
And what do you tell them?
I tell them that, according to the research and publications, that this is one of the most extensively studied and researched vaccines actually in the history of vaccinations. And so far, all of the studies are showing and continuing to show that one, it is very safe, and two, that is even more efficacious than initially stated in terms of preventing the disease of COVID.
What do you say to people and parents who say, though, how can that be possible if it's only been out there for about less than a year, but it's only been in the works for, a little bit more than a year? How can this be the most studied vaccine that we've had?
Yeah, just because of the number of participants that are involved in the initial studies, as well as currently, since the vaccine has been distributed, the CDC and other groups are continuing to monitor people who've received the vaccine, asking them, have you had any problems? What kind of problems? And recording those. And so now there's been millions and millions and millions of people that have received the vaccine, and the vaccine companies, as well as the CDC, is continuing to monitor those people and have found that the adverse reactions are very insignificant compared to the disease of COVID for many patients, as well as the safety.
Okay, let's touch on the safety then. This is about that age range for kids, 12 to 15, going through puberty. There's been some concern about what a vaccine like this might do to that. What kind of effects do we know about having on puberty, or is there any?
Yeah, I think that we don't think that there are any effects related to it. The immune system is completely different than the hormonal or endocrine system that affects puberty. I have discussions every day with families about all vaccines, even other vaccines that have been around for 10, 20 plus years. And so far, none of those vaccines have been related to any effect on a child's puberty and development. And I believe that scientifically, this vaccine is not related at all to those processes as well.
So you would highly recommend it to your patients and your parents?
I highly recommend it to anyone who is eligible to get the vaccine. Yes.
Dr. Naya Ann Tink says she understands families need to weigh the risks and benefits when it comes to vaccines and their kids. In her discussions with parents, she has told them, unlike the Pfizer vaccine, there's a greater risk to getting COVID. While most have mild cases, about 2% who get it, kids this is, by the way, they get really sick and could be sick for a long time. Or they could pass it along to those who aren't vaccinated, who may be immune compromised. Her discussions, she says, have even led to some of her teenage patients helping convince their parents not only should they get the vaccine, but so should their parents. And again, this is just the Pfizer vaccine that's been approved for that age range, 12 to 15. Moderna, still in the middle of their clinical trial. AstraZeneca is a bit behind them. By the way, the Pfizer dose will be the same in this age group as it has been in all the others. They are changing nothing, which is kind of how they treat most other vaccines, she's told us. St. Al's is scheduling appointments as of today, with St. Luke's and even other agencies opening up appointments starting tomorrow morning. You text, we respond, and sure, it might take us a day or two, but we want to make sure we get it right. People always want to compare. Is this one better than that one? Well, today, we're taking that comparison to the State House. Already the longest session, but was it the most legislative? Join the 208 conversation. 208-321-5614. That is the number, and our operators are standing by. We want to answer your questions, read your comments, and even listen to your criticism, if it is constructive and concise. Make sure your name and the hashtag the 208 is on there as well. That way we know you're talking to us.
It is a beautiful afternoon and the temperature's just about right. We're up around 80 degrees. I'll show you the highs in just a second, but if you go out over here, you can kind of see that we do have just some high clouds that are with us for the afternoon, and that's going to be very typical here for the next couple of days. We're anywhere from partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies. Look at the temperature change. What this means the past 24 hours, we're looking at temperatures that are 10 degrees warmer than what they were yesterday at this particular time. So it is a much warmer day than what we had yesterday. I'm still looking at this for 80 degrees. We haven't done it yet. You notice Boise has the 79, and then you notice over here 73 in Jerome. Mountains have temperatures in the 60s. Ontario, way over there, had the high temperature of 82 degrees for the day. Other numbers to show you are the highs for tomorrow, and they're going to be just a couple of degrees warmer, as you notice, around most locations. If you get over here to Ontario, there's the 86, 83 degrees for the high temperature in Caldwell. Twin Falls will have 80, 74 degrees for the high temperature in Stanley. So it looks much of the same. And latest satellite shows a high moving out, and here's a frontal system moving in. And that could possibly produce a few thunderstorms around the area. If you take a look here at our futurecast, you'll notice that it's basically clouds like we were talking about, but then notice a few showers right through here, moisture coming in, and then look just east of Boise. This is for later tomorrow night. There's a couple of thunderstorms that move just to our east. Watch for that.
You know, we talked a lot about the legislature today and, well, basically for the last 3 months, 5 months now. Wow, it is a record-breaking year for sure, with twists that just seem to keep on coming. There's still some lingering questions out there, though. We know that because one of you texted us a question in regards to our lawmakers. We read it, we researched it, and now we have the answer. Just what we like to do here on the 208. Ali from Boise asked us this. Brian, how does this year compare to past years, whether it comes to bills signed or vetoed? It's a great question. Past session has been anything but ordinary, but was it also anything but ordinary when it comes to those passing and vetoing of bills? Okay, so let's take a look. So far this session, Governor Little has signed 361 bills into law. 3 of those bills have been vetoed, which includes a bill that tried to rein in the powers of the chairman of the tax commission and 2 aimed at limiting the governor's powers during an emergency. Those limiting powers bills actually came back to the governor under different names with fewer restrictions, and so he did end up signing those earlier this week. So 361 out of 364, pretty much not bad, right? And while that many new laws may seem like a pretty big number, it's important to note that many of the bills passed were budgets for different government entities, which also include schools and even the state police. Okay, so how does it compare to years past? Well, strangely, 2021 is about average. Last year, 341 bills signed into law, another 6 were vetoed. 2019, about the same, 329, somewhere around that range, 2 were vetoed. And if we go back even further to 2015, there were 347 bills signed into law and 4 vetoed. 2010, then Governor Butch Otter, well, he didn't veto anything. 359 laws were enacted that year. So it also appears even within different leadership, the numbers pretty much appear about the same every year. So even though this is now the longest legislative session in Idaho history, the number of bills signed into law, not much different than, well, years past. The question that remains, if the workload is about average, why is this session still continuing on? It has to do with all that talking that goes on, I'm sure. A lot of concern about property tax bill is passed the House, or I should say signed by the governor into law today, like this one from Toby, who says, to paraphrase Albert Einstein, the hardest thing for me to understand is our property tax methodology. He was talking about income taxes, but we get the picture. Albert Einstein couldn't understand it. No wonder the legislature can't. I understand the rule, though. Property owners pay. It's a good point. They do. Of the people that have appealed their property tax, how many have had their taxes reduced? Quite a bit. Last time we did this or talked about that, there were quite a bit that did have their property taxes appealed in their favor. So if that's you, you might want to consider it.